Wendy and Tiffany, I think I'm going to start with you because you both are here for shows that are past their first season. You know, I mean, Paradise is only season 2, but only Merged in the Building's been on for a while. Obviously, Abbott Elementary. And I'm curious what the challenges and the pleasures are of casting on shows that have great pre-existing casts, but you've got to now integrate new people into the flavor of the show. And what are your sort of guiding principles in terms of what you're looking for when you're trying to integrate new actors into an existing series?
Well, for Abbott, it's thank goodness because we run out of kids quick. So it's a new school year. We get to bring in new kids. The old ones graduate. So that's refreshing. And then it's always they're trying to pepper in kind of new energy for the school. We were in a mall this year, so we had a lot of different things going on where we could incorporate sort of new faces, new freshness to kind of give the show a little bit more pulse again and to continue just a variety of people that are throughout Philadelphia. So it was really refreshing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it's different on the two different shows because I would say Paradise is sort of like a world building show. So you're really trying to think of who fits in that world and the acting styles and that sort of thing. And with Only Murders, it's more of sort of like fun, right? And trying to think of, we get a lot of incoming calls on that one of people who want to be on the show. And so it's sort of about like finding the dynamics between the different people. And we often have that like a trio, right? Like a trio that kind of matches our trio. And finding the people from really, like this last season was really fun with Renee and Christoph and Logan, because I feel like they're such from different worlds of acting, and that's what kind of tickled us. And that's sort of what we just do, what tickles us on that one.
Well, for Paradise, talk about casting your two major new parts that we saw in the clip here. Like, what were you, in terms of what you're saying about how you had to find people who fit in with that world, like what were you looking for and how did you land on them?
It was really hard because I felt like the audience really wants to see the show that they fell in love with the first season. And so I was really like, oh my gosh, we're going to do where we're outside. We're outside. Sorry, spoilers. You guys saw the thing. So it was really about finding someone. We wanted someone fresh and new for the boy, but we did want an established actor because we felt like an established actor in Annie would help the audience kind of go along the ride, not just have a full freak out of like, where's Sterling, where's Julianne, So we really talked through a list of wonderful actors. And it really just felt like it was Shailene because I think when someone has been an actor since they were a child, it's so hard to then transition into where you could be a parent, right? Like, because the audience knows you. And so we thought that felt very Paradise, right, to see Shailene do that. And then we held auditions, and Thomas Doherty is someone I met when I first got to LA and started casting, and he's gotten so close to so many jobs I've done, but then for one reason or another, it didn't happen. So I was very, very excited he came in and took this part.
Well, and now on The Testaments, that's obviously, it's a new show, but it's a spin-off of Handmaid's Tale. So for you, what was your thinking in terms of, what you wanted to keep about the flavor of Handmaid's Tale, and where did this offer sort of possibilities to go in new directions?
Well, you're casting young women to play teenagers, so I think there's a very different spirit there, and teenagers are teenagers wherever they are. Even in Gilead, they will start to rebel. So we were looking for very different and specific characteristics in each of the characters. I mean, starting with Chase, you have a mixed race person who's 15 years after we leave the story. And then, you're trying to bring some young actresses who have some humor with them in order to get a little levity in the show, which is often very serious. So, that was the case with Rowan Blanchard. She was just so funny in her auditions, which was very refreshing in this world. And it was a challenge because we knew what everyone had to do by episodes 7 and 8. And when you're not auditioning, you only have the first episode. So you're thinking ahead, how deep is the well in this young person who doesn't have the long resumes that Ann Dowd has. So you really want to keep your eye open for what you think is true talent. And we auditioned hundreds of people.
Yeah, well, talk about finding Chase Infinity, because as I understand it, you hadn't seen one battle after another.
No,
yet.
no one had seen it. So we look like geniuses now. Which we're not. If you get the lead in a Paul Thomas Anderson movie and you're playing Leo's daughter, you probably have quite a bit of talent. But no one had seen a bit of it. They wouldn't allow us to see any of it. And Chase got the role on her audition. Yeah, she taped. Yeah.
Well, and then, Nicole for Love Story, which, by the way, like, absolutely love this show and love those two lead performances. Like, they're absolutely incredible. And to me, that seems like the most daunting casting challenge, because it's like, for those of us who lived through that, I mean, we have such fixed ideas of JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. So going into it, what were the big challenges? What were you concerned about? What were you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I speak for myself and my partner, Courtney Bright, who's here in the audience, but I think luckily we didn't realize how daunting it would be when we started. We went in with just excitement and a fresh set of eyes. We actually thought that the casting of Carolyn was going to be more difficult than John, but we were totally wrong. And we were incredibly lucky. Sarah Pigeon's tape came in right away, and even with her dark black hair, it was very clear from the first moment that she was our Carolyn. She's just such an incredible actress and has a presence, and she had, besides the hair, all the physical characteristics we were looking for. But John was difficult. It was very important to Ryan and the producers that we find an unknown, and if you are an handsome actor in your late 30s who is 6'2", and the most handsome man in the world, and the most charming, you're probably a movie star. And so we searched and searched and searched and searched. And Paul also, his tape also came in early, but I will say we were always intrigued, but we didn't see it. And it took until about 3 weeks before we started shooting. And Ryan was like, why aren't we talking about that guy? And we were like, we should definitely be talking about that guy.
What were you thinking, just for all the parts? I mean, and it's such a brilliantly cast show. I mean, Jackie and Calvin Klein, I mean, all of them, you just did an amazing job. Like, what was your thinking in terms of this line between, like, how important was it to you that they physically resemble the real people? How much of it was about more of an essence? Was there room for imagination and fictionalizing? Like, how did you sort of manage all of that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a huge responsibility casting actors to play roles that are inspired by real people, and we took that seriously. Of course, the physical characteristics are important, but these actors were inspired by real people. This is a dramatization, so I do think we had a little leeway, but I think we did a pretty good job of staying course.
Well, then, Carmen, like, one of the fun things about Wonder Man, which people saw in the clip we showed, is it's a show about acting and about actors. And so I'm curious how that informs the casting process when you're, are you looking for people? There's this sort of funny self-awareness that the performers in this, I feel like, have to kind of poke fun at what they do. I mean, is that something that's on your mind as you're casting it?
Well, when we started, we only had Sir Ben. So yes, when thinking about Yaya, or actually Wonder Man, Simon, you had to consider all of the things. You had to consider, did they have a sense of humor about themselves? Do they connect to the passion, being such a the sort of vulnerable idea of their passion? And then also, can they actually look like a superhero? So that got us to Yaya pretty quickly. And then for everyone else, what I really thought about, actually, because it was a show about the making of these things, and we were shooting in Los Angeles, for me it was really it made me really happy to be able to sort of see a clean slate of local actors for all of these parts, and to imagine, that it was people I hadn't seen before, and so this is like a new crop of people, and sort of, in a sense, give them hope in the same way that the characters in Wonder Man were always seeking that exact same feeling.
I'm curious, since there's stuff in the show that revolves around auditions and casting and everything, I mean, did the filmmakers look to you as any kind of technical advisor or resource for any of that?
No, they didn't. I mean, there were moments of, that I could play the casting director, which I rejected very quickly. But besides that, no, I mean, the thing about these filmmakers is that they really love actors and they love the collaboration of all of it. So I think the heart was baked in. They didn't need me to sort of advise on that.
And you've also got actors in this show playing themselves, like Joe Pantoliano and Ashley from Twilight, whose last name I'm forgetting, but
Green, yeah.
Yeah, Ashley Green. Talk a little bit about the process of figuring out who you were going to get for those parts, who was going to play themselves, and what the conversations were like in terms of them kind of making fun of their own personas.
What's great about the team on Wonder Man is that they're sort of big thinkers and really don't sort of fixate on an idea. So when you're doing those kinds of things, it's great because sort of the world is your oyster, right? So we can just banter back and forth about people. And then in that case, it really is a collaboration with the agents because it's also, would someone like that be interested? Are they available? You're always, all of us, we're all, beholden to availabilities. So we can only be as creative as the sort of pool that is available to us. So it's really that. And the team was just excited about going down various paths, imagining these people. Josh Gad, who would have thought? It was not sort of where we started, but we started with a big list.
Well, and speaking of like celebrity cameos or guest spots or whatever, I mean, Abbott Elementary, obviously you get a lot of big people doing kind of guest roles or smaller parts. I mean, like I loved seeing Ed Begley Jr. this season and things like that. I mean, talk a little bit about, are you in a situation, is it similar to what Tiffany was describing for Only Murders, where at this point, are people calling you and coming to you and wanting to be on Abbott? And if so, how do you kind of decide where to find a place for people?
I think they're DMing Quinta, but I mean, when we started Abbott, part of our mandate was, or our thinking was to not have it too recognizable, to take you into a world and have it be this place that you visit, that you kind of get lost in the normal. So I think that was very much a conscious choice. And I think, networks like things and things change, and so we did sort of start to incorporate a little bit more, Bradley Cooper jumping in, and some fun, especially if they're Philly born and raised. That's a beautiful nod to the city. So we had the Eagles, we had just sort of fun Philadelphia themed adventures that would come on. So I think that was really important. And then, yes, like the Begleys, like we are lucky that people would love to just show up and play with the cast that they've kind of learned to love. So it's been a balance for sure, a very conscious balance.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned having to cast, new students. What's your approach in terms of casting child actors? I mean, how do you know, to Sharon's point about the younger actors on Testaments, here it's even younger. So how do you know that they're going to be able to pull it off, that they're going to be able to rise to the demands of being on a television show?
Well, with Abbott, again, it's usually like making sure the parents are sane. That's a big piece of it, and meeting the parents. But also, oh guys, but also, with Abbott, they have such an incredible system. So, and when I watch the dailies, you see it in motion, where the kids are in a classroom and they actually forget they're acting. They believe they're in this classroom, and they start calling the actors by their names. You see them, doing drills and schoolwork, and so they really. The system that they've provided on set, between our acting coach, between the producers, the ADs, they're just so welcomed, and they're set up to succeed. Nobody fails. So I think we've taken some swings, and probably some of these kids haven't been, necessarily naturally gifted, but they're in an environment that just increases their success. So it's a really lovely place to work on set.
Well, that idea of creating an environment that's going to foster success kind of leads me to a question for everybody, which is, I'm curious what kind of environment you try to create when you're auditioning people to both put the actor the most at ease and also make sure you're getting what you need. Because, some actors, it's a different skill set auditioning versus what you deliver on the day. And so how do you create the circumstance where you're getting the best idea of what they're going to actually be able to give you?
I'm going to answer that. Obviously, we're in a new world since post-COVID with a lot of self-tapes or Zooms. I'm very proud that we have an office and we still have actors come in, but I would still say that the majority are self-tapes, then come Zooms, and then in the room. So with the Zooms and in the room, you're coming into my home. And when you come into my home, I want to make you feel welcome and relaxed. And it's not that I'm a great, smart businesswoman, but if you make someone relax, they're going to do their best work. And if you make them feel good, and especially on a Zoom, you give notes, and then you give the actor the chance to play. And I think that's why actors become actors, because they want to play. And I think that's something casting directors can do, is just make them feel comfortable. With a self-tape, we try to give a lot of information so that you understand the world you're getting into, and some notes. When we were cast, I forgot Brad Alexander's the name of the role in the Testaments. I just remember the actor's name, not the name of the role. But we had to give a lot of notes because a lot of the young men were playing it macho and were flirting in the scene, and we had to say, if you flirt, you will die. You will go on the wall. You will be out of a job in one day and dead. So you have to get through this scene without flirting with her, without being macho. That is not what you do. So I think that really helped people go, oh, I can't do it like I typically do it.
I would agree with what Sharon said. I think I've often said this. We work in the coldest room in the world because one human goes in thinking they could be rejected, and the other human goes in thinking they might have to reject, which are both human experiences we all try to avoid. And that's where we live. We live there as casting directors. So to me, as like Sharon says, make people feel relaxed. I think all of us want to welcome actors when we're in person, so let them know that we're excited they're there, and then really just, I think, be personable and friendly. And honestly, I think a lot of actors think, I'm going to know how well I did based on my experience in there, and you really don't, because one, a lot happens after you leave the room, before you get cast, but also because when I say thank you to an actor who has come to audition in the room, it is authentic. And you might feel like, wow, I killed that. And you might not be right for the part, but I really am grateful that you came into the room because it's really scary. And I recognize that. And so I always appreciate that an actor came to the Zoom, came to audition, sent in a tape. And I think that that's how we have to go through life, is being grateful because it is scary.
And you'll remember them for something else.
Yeah.
If someone comes in and they audition and we really like them, they're not right for that role, but now they're in our Rolodex and we remember them for something else that might come along.
Yeah, I always talk about it like it's a collaboration to me, the two of us in a room together, and it may not be for this thing, but like Nicole said, it's a long-term relationship that we're building with actors, and the auditions that don't go forward, it's just work we did together. And that will hopefully pay off in the next thing. I do little I still have my office too, so I see people in person. And one of the things I realized, like 10 years ago, I looked at my walls and I was like, oh, there's Matt Damon and The Martian, the poster of Matt Damon and The Martian staring down at them. There's this and that. And then I thought, oh my God, I would not want to come into this room. So I took it all down and I made it look like my living room at home, and it just has like art and it's like candles and it's nice. And I thought, this is what I would want to come into. Like this
I should
no
do
one
that.
needs to see Matt Damon
We
staring
have a
back
picture
at
of
them.
Brian
They're-
Cranston in his underwear as soon as you walk in our office.
Right.
Just
I just tried to lower the sort of like stress.
Well, and along the lines of what Sharon was saying about how we are in a world now where it's a lot of self-taping, a lot of Zoom auditions, things like that. I mean, what do you all find are the sort of pros and cons of that world, both for you and for the actor, that so much more is done now outside the room?
Well, I just want to dispel a myth because, I went down the Instagram hole and I saw somebody saying, oh, the casting directors don't even watch the self-tapes. That is not true. I
Not
promise
true.
you, at least everybody here and every hardworking casting director is watching them all. That's why we're so tired.
Because if we're not watching them, we're going to miss something. I mean, it's
called FOMO. It's real.
But also
doesn't
we
behoove us to not watch.
But also, we
want
really respect actors, and why would we make an actor do something that then we wouldn't sort of respect by watching it? Like, that's just that there's no benefit to us for that. I
just want to add in our defense, because I get a lot of I'm not getting feedback. And it's like, we're not getting feedback. It's very difficult for us to get feedback from producers and directors sometimes, especially if it's an ongoing series. We can't control where they're watching the auditions or how they're watching the auditions. And so sometimes we get the same note, I don't know, just see more. What's not working? I don't know. And so we don't have a clear path necessarily to give to the agents or to give why someone didn't get a job. So it's not for lack of care or concern. It's genuinely a lack of shared information. And so we have the same frustrations that you guys have, if speaking to the actors, of sharing that. We don't have it sometimes.
Well, and I think it's also hard because one person gets each role. We don't just see one person who's good or did a great audition. And I think that's the hardest thing, is that when you want feedback as an actor, you want to know, why didn't you get it? You're not actually looking for what could I do? I mean, you might trick yourself, but really what you want to know is, why didn't I get it? And I understand that. I think all of us have empathy for that, but you just didn't get it because someone else got it. We might have argued for 3 hours in a circle about how good the top choices are, and then we have to get them to pick one person. Otherwise, we don't have a show.
I'm sure we've all had times when we go, can we just hire all 3 of them, please? It just breaks your heart to go to those 2 people who didn't get the big role. So that really is true.
But I also think that I know that we all advocate for those 2 that didn't get it to get another role in the project, or obviously in the next ones or whatever. But a lot of times, the people who come in second and third land in another role.
Honestly, when I was coming up in the New York office under Bernie, he would come out of a day of final callbacks, for the theater, where it's all day long. Dance calls, singing, everything, and he'd come out and he wouldn't even tell us who got it. He'd tell us who was amazing, who didn't get it, because they're still available for all of us to go after them, and it's how we were trained, right? This is how you do it.
Well, and speaking to Wendy's point about, not necessarily getting feedback from the producers or the network or whatever, I mean, to somebody like me on the outside of this, I look at a casting director's job and I'm just like, oh, that's the most fun job in the world. You just make lists of great actors and you put them in your show, whatever. How much of your job is actually sort of people management and logistical stuff and administrative stuff and all this unsexy material? Yeah.
It definitely
All
gets
of it?
there. Yeah.
90%.
90%.
The beginning
Well,
part's
humans.
really creative and fun, and you're doing lists and you're talking about ideas, and then by the end, you're just scouring a board. Agents are driving you crazy because they're telling you someone's available and they're not available, and you have to tell your producers, sorry, I got bad information. That's the worst. It turns into a lot of logistical.
Well, and aside from just watching the auditions and watching the tapes and all that kind of stuff, what do you do to keep yourself aware of new talent and new actors? I mean, do you go to the theater? Are you watching a lot of movies and TV? What sorts of things are you doing to be aware of people?
Yeah, I mean, I went to a clowning performance on Friday. And I think we all go to a lot of theater. It was funny. But we all go to a lot of theater. I go in. I know Sharon and I take trips to New York. I go to London a lot.
Chicago, and I see theater in LA. But I have partners, and we all try to see, sometimes we'll all see the same thing, you know, because I'll come back from New York and like, you're fired if you don't go see Ragtime. You know, I literally said that to my assistant. I will fire you if you don't go see Ragtime because you're a theater nerd. But I think you know, you go to different things, you watch different television shows. I watch a lot of foreign television. I'm learning French, so
Fancy.
I've watched a lot of French television shows, a lot of French movies. You know, and I think in a casting office, and we're all in offices, we work with other people, we share information because there's just too much content out there for anybody to watch everything. You know, so there's oftentimes, you know, I'm saying, does anybody know that actor? And like 2 of the assistants will go, oh my God, they're great. And they'll tell you what to watch. And I think what people have to remember is it's not relaxing really watching television, it's work, because we're not looking necessarily at the lead actors, we're watching every little piece, because that's what makes a beautiful ensemble and a beautiful story. And you go, wow, look at those faces. Like, you know, I was just talking beforehand, like, did you see Rooster? Did you see what Allison Jones did? Oh my God, it's so fantastic. So, you know, those 1 and 2 and 3 line roles, you really like are watching and you write a note and you remember for something else.
A real thing too that I have found is that there are casting directors whose work I really love. So I'm drawn to their shows first because I know that all those little parts are going to be amazing, and then I can steal from them.
I do that too.
When I first moved to LA, whoever cast Shameless, I can't even remember right now, but that's when I feel stuck. I always just go to IMDb and look. I never even watched Shameless. I just know that every time I've ever auditioned an actor from that, they were good. And so that's like my middle of the night. Like, I don't think we have it. Maybe let me just make sure that we saw everyone that might be right that was on Shameless.
Well, I'm just curious, going down the line here, like for each of your shows, and it doesn't have to be the most recent season, what was the most difficult part for you to cast, and how did you solve it?
I'll go last.
The last?
Me?
I can go because I think we're out there. JFK Jr. was the most difficult role for us to cast. Again, like, I don't think we could have ever anticipated how difficult it would be, but we were just looking for some very specific characteristics, and some guys got really close, but it didn't hit. And then once we saw Paul with Sarah, it was funny. They were going to there was going to be a chemistry read, and Paul's agent called our office and was like, ugh, I'm so sorry, but like, he was meant to go back to Portland, but now he's gonna be here and he has his dog. Like, what should we do with the dog? And Courtney and I are both like, bring the dog. He needs to bring the dog. And anyways, I don't know if that got him the job, but.
Well, I'm just curious, how tough was it figuring out who your Jackie was going to be?
Jackie wasn't, I mean, we did a list, but it was always going to be Naomi. Yeah. Who was perfect. And yeah, a lot of the other pieces, like Alessandro, he was the only person we went to. Grace Gummer gave an incredible audition. Constance's role, it took us a second, but then once Constance read with us, it was very clear that she was the right woman for the job, which we were thrilled about because I've been wanting to cast Constance Zimmer for years. So that was exciting.
I would say for me it was Julianne Nicholson, because in reading it was so clearly her. And I felt like in talking to her agent, it was like, this is going to be perfect. This is timing. And then I was in New York seeing theater, and I was woken up at, it was the opposite. Somehow I was woken up at 5 a.m. and was like, you know that Julianne's not available until mid-March. Because she's doing a show in the UK called Dope Girls. And I'm like checking every text. And I'm saying, no, that's not the middle of March. It's February. She wraps in February. And they were like, no, the middle of March. And this is after 3.5 weeks of negotiating. which I learned, and I actually tried to call a meeting to say, hey, how come BA isn't putting dates in the offer? I don't understand how this happens. So I wanted to die. But Dan Fogelman advocated to move things and make it work, and thank God it's happened. But that's the hardest, like, for me personally, because I just felt so sick. It might not be her.
Sharon, do you remember any particularly difficult part to cast on the Testaments?
Well, you know, it was a show where there were no lists for the young girls. So that was exciting in a way because everybody was so new. So, I didn't know who Chase and Finn, I didn't know any of the girls before we started. So I think all the girls were challenging, but maybe the most challenging parts were, I think, Amy Simon's role and Bialy, because we didn't want to replicate and have another same tone of the parents that were in The Handmaid's Tale. I didn't want to recast Yvonne Strahovski. And interestingly enough, both Bialy and Fidalia and Amy Simons, who plays Chase's mother, when they auditioned, went the opposite way of what they had seen on Handmaid's Tale. In the performances, they were pushed a little bit more towards that, but it was their gentleness and their kindness that I think opened all of our eyes to say, this is another story to tell, another way to cast it, so people aren't watching Handmaid's Tale 2.0. And that was challenging.
I would say it wasn't really an obstacle or that much of a challenge, but something that an episode that we had to pay very close attention to and work with a cultural consultant on is the Yaya's family, because they were Haitian. And for me, I mean, for all of us, it's very important to sort of, nail the authenticity. And at the same time, we're not allowed to ask if you're Haitian or not. So that's always a challenge. But we did work with a cultural consultant, and for me, I find that really enjoyable. But it does just take a little bit more work. And yeah.
Wendy, you think
Still
of anybody?
nothing. No,
All right.
I mean, we just didn't. There wasn't any. It all. We did
That's
it.
good.
I don't know.
I want to work on your show.
Well, I know we've got a cocktail party to go to out there, so I'll wrap this up. But thank you all so much for doing this. This has been really great.
Thank you.